I'm Olwen Cade and welcome to Olwen Cade Living Soulfully Tuesday Night Live. Tonight's topic is about alchemy. It's about spinning your straw into gold. What does that mean? Well, that means a lot of things. So I've got a lot of ground to cover with you tonight and a lot of stories I want to share with you about what that means to be an alchemist and to spin straw into gold. The phrase spinning straw into gold comes from the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Now, Rumpelstiltskin was a fairy story. I remember it as a child, and it was the story of a man who told lies about the abilities of his daughter to the king. He told the king that his daughter could spin straw into gold, and so the king decided that this would be a very advantageous service for him to acquire from this young woman. So he locked her up in a room and told her that she needed to spin straw into gold or she would lose her life. Well, she didn't know what to do and how to do this, so basically she had to sort of ask for help. Help came in the form of the strange little man who fulfilled her brief of spinning the straw into gold every night, and of course the king was delighted and wanted more and more. And he told her that he would only do this if she fulfilled a number of things. First of all, basically, it came down to the fact that she had to guess his name, or he would take her firstborn child. So the bases are all loaded here. In the end, of course, she discovers his name and finds out it's Rumpelstiltskin, and he gets so angry in the story I read that he jumped up and down so hard that he disappeared through the floorboards. And I presume she lived happily ever after, if there is such a thing. How does that relate to this whole thing of alchemy? I guess the thing is that from the girl's point of view is that she was in an incredibly adverse situation. She was in a state of chaos, that her father had set her up in this situation to have this king believe that she could do something that she couldn't, and her life was on the line to fulfill that. And if she didn't, then she was going to lose her life. So she had to think outside the box. This little man appears, and he also then puts her up against the wall by saying that he will do this, but she has to give him her firstborn child unless he can find his name. So she does that, and of course she wins throughout. She kept her head, I guess, in a really sort of difficult situation. And here we all are in the world now in a very difficult situation. We're in a state of incredible chaos. There are, we're in a lot of fear, and we've talked about this before in the Tuesday Night Live programs. I think that the most important thing to come out of all of this will be our creativity and our ingenuity, our ability to hold our nerve throughout all of this, and who we're placing our faith in. In New Zealand here, it is in our government and our leader, Jacinda Ardern, and the people who are surrounding her making the decisions. I'm also drawn today to a story that happened 50 years and 10 days ago, when in 2:13 p.m. in the afternoon of the 11th, I think it was, of April, the Apollo 13 spacecraft blasted off, and 3 men went into space. Now, those 3 men, I have their names here, were Jim Lovell, John Swigart and Fred Hayes, and they were going to make the third planned landing on the moon. That was their mission. And of course, not long after they took off, and on the start of their mission, before they'd even reached the moon at all, they had to stir the tanks and had an explosion. Consequently, they found that they were in a very precarious situation. The situation was, and you may remember from the movie or from your history books, that they couldn't actually stay in the command module, which was the one that was going to take them home, that was equipped to be able to handle all of them, because that was the one that had the problem. They had to go to the lunar landing module, which was only equipped for 2 men for a very short space of time, and was meant to they were meant to come back up to the command module and come back into that to come home, but of course they couldn't. So the lunar landing module became their life raft. The problem with that was that they were running out of oxygen very fast because, and I have to check my notes here, courtesy of my dear hubby. This is his forte and his thing, not mine. So I've actually had to check with this. They had these things called, John says, they're small CO2 scrubbers, but basically they are like filters that remove all the poisonous CO2 from the air, from the system, and the air system that the astronauts were breathing, and it was overloaded. So the only thing they could do was to go to the command module and get the ones from there, and hopefully they could replace them. But the problem was that the ones in the command module were square and the ones in the lunar module were round. So it was literally square peg round hole. Now the people on the ground had to come up with an ingenious way of being able to make that square peg and that round hole work for them. So they had to couple together and grapple together all of these different things from what they knew was in the module: spacesuits, plastic bags, tape, hoses, whatever they could find, the oddest things. And they spent an enormous amount of time, which they didn't have, concentrating 24 hours a day, 7 days, or 6 days, or 3 days, however long they had, trying to cobble this thing together to get these men home, because they were fast running out of oxygen and they were very unwell. And long story short is that we all know that the outcome of that story was that they arrived home. The other really interesting things about it is that, like the COVID-19 that we have right now, is that the world stopped and watched and waited and prayed and sent wonderful messages and did all the things that we're doing right now, sent enormous amounts of love to these men and to the people at NASA who were trying to get them home. And I think that one of the great quotes of Apollo 13 is that Jim Lovell, in his reaching out to NASA, in his ordered desperation to see if they had found a solution, said, the Earth is looking awfully big in the window. In other words, have you got a solution? And those three men's lives were in the hands of their colleagues on Earth. And they had to put their faith and trust in them in order to get them home alive, because there was no rescue mission. There was no one coming to save them. It was do or die. And so, the people on Earth, of course, in the NASA space program were very, very aware that they had to get this right, that they had one shot at this. And if they didn't get it right, those men were going to lose their lives. So there was an awful lot of alchemy had to go on there. Things that wouldn't normally fit together and work together. They had to think outside the square. They had to work under an enormous amount of pressure in order to be able to bring these men home and save their lives. And there wasn't any money, there wasn't any profit, there wasn't any of those things that was on anyone's mind. It was just to save the lives of these men. And so they did. They came up with this device that was cobbled together, an incredible thing. And the astronauts in the lunar landing module were able to make that themselves and put it together and be able to save their lives and breathe and get themselves home. Now, I think the thing that's really important here is that we have to also do that in the sense of relying upon those people who are like the men at NASA. They are working hard and working long hours and working for the greater good of all to try and save lives. I think that's the most important thing to remember. And yes, there are lives and livelihoods. There are livelihoods at stake here, but lives are more important in the long run, as was in Apollo 13. And if you're struggling out there and you're thinking, how am I going to survive here? How is my business going to survive? How am I going to make my way through this? I've lost my job, I've been made redundant, I don't know what to do, how am I going to earn a living? Then the most important thing to do is to, first of all, stop panicking, because in your panic you won't actually find that wonderful alchemy. You'll just find more fear. And then begin the process of thinking outside the square. Look at what you've got, like they did at Apollo 13. What have they got up there? What could they use? What have you got around you right now? What have you got? What gifts do you have? What things could you do? You know, how could you make this work for yourself? What have you done before that you've never thought had any value that now could have value? Or what could you learn that could bring value to what you're doing right now? It's really, really important that we kind of become, as I've said in my little blurb at the beginning, you know, become our own fairy godmothers and turn a dress from a pumpkin. There's a really dear friend of mine who's been making face masks. You know, she's been sewing these face masks. And in fact, she's actually supplied us with some, and she's supplied businesses with them, you know, people with them. A great thing. She's a wonderful seamstress, but that's what she's done. She's turned her gifts into something really amazing. And I've had a couple of really great conversations lately with friends of mine who one is employed by a government department, and you know, and she's really enjoying being able to work from home, and this is a real bonus for her, and she hopes that she might actually be able to continue to do this, because it hadn't been in their thinking that this was possible before now. But of course, all you know, bets are off, and it's do what you have to do. And another friend of mine, she has a drama school, and of course, you know, you can't gather with your students, but and she was saying, you know, how Zoom has given her an opportunity to have meetings with her tutors, her staff, because she said it was very difficult to get them all together in one place at one time. And this has given her the opportunity to find a new way of being able to meet with her staff. And there are so many wonderful stories of people who are going, gosh, you know, out of this has come something really great. Out of this has come something incredibly important that I didn't know that we could do. And I think that's what's really important right now, is to spin that straw into gold. And not only that, is to hold your nerve and to actually really sit quietly and be with yourself and look at what your gifts and your talents are. And think of all those things that you've always wanted to do that you haven't been able to do. Is there something you've always wanted to do but you haven't quite had the nerve to do it, or you haven't found the time to be able to investigate it, or whatever it might be? And it's also an incredible time to work together, like those men at Apollo 13. They all worked together, they all came together for a common cause, to be able to join together with other people and to collaborate and to talk and to discuss and to talk openly about what's happening for you and what gifts you have. You know, sometimes volunteering, sometimes just offering to help can be a great way to start a new process and a new way forward for yourself. I know it has for me. I know that, you know, when my venture into theatre, which was life-saving for me, was as a volunteer. I was just a member of a company, and it was just the best thing that ever happened for me. I learned so much about myself and about life and about the team spirit and working together towards a common cause by being in that process. And I also made connections in my community that I wouldn't otherwise have made. I got to meet business people and other people, which then led me on to other things and more things again and again down the track. And I think that's really important too, is at the moment we're isolated and we're kind of on our own physically, but of course via the internet we're not. And there are lots of great groups popping up now, you know, to help share what's going on and who's out there and what's available, and for us to all talk to each other. So don't be shy and don't be afraid to put your head up and ask or put yourself out there or offer to help someone for free and give yourself willingly to something that might have interested you before, but perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to pursue that, and you'd like to look at it from a non-profit situation. Look, we all have to eat and we all have to pay our rent, but I also think that it's a time to ask for help, and And if you're afraid to say that you're struggling, then no one will know that you need help. That's another form of alchemy. Alchemy is not about just spinning straw into gold and making riches and doing those things. Alchemy is a magical thing. It comes from our ability to let go of our fear, even though we may be terrified inside, and trust in something much bigger than ourselves. And when we do that, when we let go of that fear, when we realize that we're part of something much greater than us, then we can, and we let that in, then we can start to see that really our ego self is the one that doesn't want to admit that we're not, not coping, or that we're poor, or whatever, or that we need help. So reach out, and if you get rejected, don't give up. Just keep asking. The right people will turn up. The right people in the right time will turn up in your space, and they will be there for you, and they will see you for who you are. But you have to be presenting yourself as you are. Now that makes you vulnerable. I posted on my Facebook pages today. I sent out to my family and my close friends a love letter to tell them how special they were to me, and how important they were to me, and how much they meant to me in my life. And that was kind of scary for me to do that. I was like, I really want to do this, but people could think it was sappy, or they might laugh at me, or whatever. But I really wanted to do it because it was so important to me, and I did it, and I got some lovely feedback from it. And if people think it's sappy, well, yeah, that's on them. I don't mind, But it was so important to me at this time, because I miss my family and my friends. I miss being able to see them and hug them and just be in their presence. And I've not taken that for granted, but I didn't realise how much that meant to me. So in this process of us being locked down and being away from each other, there is that alchemy of realising what we have and how important that is, to recognise that and to appreciate that. Gratitude is a huge, I suppose, ingredient in any kind of alchemy process. It's gratitude and love and being vulnerable, but also being really, really open to all possibilities. Keeping an open mind and an open heart are the first part of that growth into that new place that you're going to be. Now, one of the things that I want to share with you also is just a lovely story, and it's a story of many years ago when I was directing theatre, and we were doing Fiddler on the Roof in Rangiora, and we had a major malfunction of technical proportion, where we lost all our lights, all the stage lighting, the board that had all the lighting cues in it. The power had been turned off at the mains, and of course it was a digital board, and it just scrambled everything. So we had a 3-hour full show full of lighting cues for every scene, with lots of cues in every scene, and it was gone. So there was some serious chaos, ensued for the first while about what are we going to do. And it's 7 o'clock and the show opens at 8, and we realised this was the problem. And there was this man who worked with me. His name was Andrew, and he just worked so feverishly to try and get us some lighting to get us going. And he very, very bravely set to and worked scene by scene, cue by cue through every scene to get lights on that stage so that we could get our way through a 3-hour show. And at the end of the show, I was also the director, I was also the stage manager. At the end of the show, I can still hear his feet running down that aisle, coming towards me at the stage, and him and I just sort of meeting in the middle, boom, and having this huge hug and sigh of relief. And I was so incredibly proud of him that out of that chaos had come something really wonderful. First of all, that he'd gotten us through that 3-hour show, and he'd made it work, which was just so stressful for him. But secondly, it had really, really cemented our friendship and my huge respect for him. And it changed the way that I saw him, and it changed our relationship. And he went on to to become an incredible part of my team, of my production team in the many, many years to come. So out of chaos can come so many good things. You know, chaos is the birthplace of creativity. If you look at chaos in space, where stars are created and galaxies and so on, there is this chaos, this sort of, you know, great huge amounts of energy, and then new life is born from that. And that's what happens for us. And we can try and avoid chaos all we like, but it's going to find us. And when it does, the best possible thing that we can do is to stop. And after we've, you know, stopped panicking and running around like headless chickens and being afraid, which is all natural and all perfectly normal thing for us to do, and gone through the whole fear and grief process and whatever else we need to do, we need to try and get ourselves through that as quickly as we can, and then get to the calm place where we realise that this is a wonderful opportunity for us to change, to have something new, the birthplace of something new for us. The opportunity for us to grow, to be challenged, which is what we need. Without challenge, we wouldn't grow. We would just stay stagnant, and we'd stay in the same old jobs, doing the same old things with the same old people day in, day out, and nothing would ever change. But look how much the world has changed in the last 6 weeks or 2 months, hugely. And it's changing, as I've said before, day by day, moment by moment. As we go into this new part of our COVID-19 challenge coming Tuesday, just remember that, you know, we're not out of the woods, we're still in there, and that it's going to be a new thing for us, and where it's going to hit our senses, and it's going to be unknown to us as to what this all means. So how we act and behave in that is going to really reverberate out to everyone around us and to our wider community. So it's really important that we hold our nerve, just like the young lady in the Rumpelstiltskin story and those people at Apollo 13 through that saga. It's really important that we do. I was talking to my daughter earlier on. She said she went to the supermarket for the first time today, and you know, it was really surreal for her. She said that she was so overwhelmed, and it was so different because she hadn't been to the supermarket in this new environment, that she actually forgot a whole lot of things. It was so big for her. And that's been happening for everyone, and this is going to be no different. It's going to be a whole new normal for us for the next couple of weeks, maybe longer. So what we do in that time will really shape us and decide how we can find our way into the next new normal. Whatever we do here, this is an opportunity for us to really, really grow, for us to see ourselves in a whole new way, and to tap into that wonderful creative part of us, that infinite part of ourselves that is connected to the all that is, and which of course is full of infinite possibilities. So challenge yourself to look at this in a different way. And if you're on the inside frightened and scared and unsure and having problems and you don't know where to go next, just stop for a little bit and talk to that part of yourself. Just talk to that frightened part of yourself and say, it's all right, this too shall pass, and whatever happens, I'm going to be okay. And this is an opportunity for us to grow. It's an opportunity for me to see my life in a whole new way, and try and have that conversation, because it is truly one of the most important conversations that you'll ever have. And if you need reminding of, you know, how truly divine we are, and how we are part of something greater than all of this, then just remember that we live on a ball in space. You know, we live on a ball in space. Think about that. And that what's holding us here on this ball in space is this invisible force that we call gravity. And if we didn't have that, we'd all float off and everything would float into space. If you go outside right now and you stand there and look up, the only thing that's holding you here on this earth is an invisible force that you can't see that stops you from floating into space. And it's magical. And if you look at how it all fits together, it's alchemy. It's incredible. And scientists have given it names, and they have looked at it all and gone, it's this, it's that, it's something else. And that even keeps changing. The more they look down the microscope and through the telescope and into the atoms and the inside of the atoms and everything that goes on from there, they're realizing that it's not what they thought it was. It's actually something much more profound and often indescribable. And so are we. So I just invite you to stop for a bit, to think about, the stories of like Apollo 13 and how those men came home 50 years ago. Incredible, isn't it, to think that if things had been different and they couldn't have made a square peg fit a round hole, that we would have been having a whole different story, and that you can do the same thing with your life, with a bit of duct tape and a plastic bag and perhaps a box or whatever else you need to do. Get them out, have a look at them and see what you can make for yourself of your new life. And I know you'll be amazed at what you can do. I know you will. And I know there is so much ingenuity going on at the moment. There is so much creativity going on where people are reinventing themselves and reshaping their lives and looking at how they can make the most of this situation. I think the most precious thing that we can do is to remember this, that this whole COVID-19 lockdown, shutdown process is to save lives. That's what it's for. It's to save lives. It's so that we can all protect the vulnerable and those people who are most susceptible, but also just to protect ourselves and each other and our families. COVID-19 doesn't care whether you're old or young, rich or poor, the Prime Minister. It doesn't care. And I think that's the great leveller in all of this, is that we've all done this to save lives. So let's hold that in our hearts as we go through these difficult times. And I know that we're such good-hearted people. We're good people. And that you're all really good people. And that you will come through this and you'll be strong. And that if you need help or you need support, just send me a message, say, I'm struggling. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I'm happy to do that. If you just need a wee bit of help, just to help you see the wood for the trees, just send me a message. I'm more than happy to just go, you're okay, it's okay, and just perhaps help shed a wee bit of light for you just to help you get through, because I know how tough that is when you might be on your own. All right? So I wish you really well. That's all I have for tonight. It's not groundbreaking. It's not all out there and woo-woo. It's actually really down-to-earth stuff that when our backs are against the wall, we can either fall down and be victims, or we can spin straw into gold, and we can save our lives in more ways than one. So I wish you well. Happy journeying, and yeah, go well. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.